Jeff Burnett old house. R.J. Moore's house. Far back as I can remember, this is the Ruth Lambert old house. Who lives there now is unknown. I remember this as the first live there was black people, then Herbert Williams, and now unknown. Caleb Cooper's new barbershop. Bobby Eubanks. Helen Howard. Ruth's house. Nobody lives there now. Ford house later became Frank Gaddis and Mary Gaddis' home. Olin Eubanks built this house and later sold it to Murph Fowler. I don't know who lives there now. This is the Bill Perkins house. I can remember when Vernon Durham lived there. The old house. Bobby Eubanks built this house, later sold it to Herman and Helen Howard. I can remember when Grover Cooper lived here, the Coopers, then Shrimp Durham, and later Crate Johnson. This is the old Ed Tripp house, then later Will Council moved in, and several trips. Shine Gills later bought it. And now Bobby Gills lives there. Back of the old house that Billy Perkins built. His wife, Gretchen, lives there now. Mary King's beauty shop, beauty parlor, whatever. The house that Floyd King built after the schoolhouse burnt up. Frank Harris's old rental trailer. Sitting behind the schoolhouse, old schoolhouse that burnt down, there was a bedspread factory there when it burnt down. You're now looking at the old pump house and the water tank. This is the Frank Harris house. He built on top of the old boiler room. He's got a basement where the old boiler room was. This was the backyard of the old schoolhouse. Leighton Hernan's house. Frank and Louise Harris's house. The front of the old schoolhouse, a circle drive. This is the Clyde Morris house. Later, J.G. Williams moved in. He lives there now. I'm standing in the old schoolhouse road, which is now called the Williams Pond Road. You're looking at once where the house that Ernest Williams lived in burned up in about 1936 or 7, somewhere along that. Grover Cooper once lived there, then Shrimp Durham, now Alfred Johnson. Roland Eubanks built this house. He lives there now. Mr. Kerry Durham built this house for Mr. Frank Ferrell. Not sure, but Mr. Frank lived in it. Later, belongs to Louise, his daughter now. Roy Eubanks, as I can remember, was the first in living here. Then I can remember Clyde Stout. And then I think Shirley Whitaker bought it. You're now entering the downtown in Bynum. Okay, good. I can remember several families living in this house. Herbert Herndon, Jack Parker, and R.O. Abernathy. Owen Moe live there now. Rob, how you doing now? All right. Good. Hampton Night Place. Jack Wheeler lives here now. Old store building. Gurney Williams went in business there. Later, Cheyenne Gales had a little business there.
You remember that?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm filming downtown Bynum now. People lived here back as I can remember. And Joe Mitchum, and later the last ones now is the Gales, Cheyenne Gales. He had said Mr. Gurney Williams once lived here. I can remember Bill Fowler. Later, Clyde Rigsby bought it. He lives here now. Drive. Louis Durham built Kenny Howard, bought it later, I don't know what year. His wife lives here now. They built this house. He lives there now. This is the old Walt Hatley house. I don't know. That's back far as I can remember. He lives there. Carl Neal's daddy built this house here. And Carl Neal lived in it. Now, Mrs. Numa Perry lives here. The house next to it, I can remember when the Howards, Roy Howard's mother and them lived there. And now, Florence Durham lives there now, and her daughter, P.J. Mitchell.
Food, he built him a little old cafe here. You remember when the cafe is on this end of the building? That's before the steel store was built. This first portion of the rock.
C.E. Durham's last store, the rock store, as we know. Mr. Curious at one time had a barber shop and a restaurant in the low end of his new store. Later, years, he built a theater known as the Star Theater. Then that's his old store building. That's where he got started. I helped him move in the 40s to his new building again. In the late 40s, I went to work with him on the weekends.
Then you pick up both houses up on the other top of the hill if you want.
Okay, hold. This old store that Mr. Carey started in was later a barber shop in there, and the post office moved in later. Go ahead, Eddie. The next building here, Henry Hearn built this. This is on the mill property. And it was later run by Arthur Smith, as known as Fat Smith. This is the Carey Durham house. He lived there until he died. The next house is the J.M. Durham house. It's one of the oldest houses in Bynum. Manly Durham lives there now, which is J.M.'s grandson. Louis Durham built this house. Royal E. Eubanks lives there now. Yeah, he did. Joe Williams' brother.
Good big guy.
Huh?
Good
Is that
big
right?
I don't know
I
where
don't
Joe
remember.
Williams' brother is. He's
I don't
that big
remember.
guy. He lived up on the hill too, I
Yeah.
think.
All right, let's get it. This is the Royal E. Eubanks' house. Rupert Eubanks' his house. Merle Fry started this house, and Rupert lives there now. You are now looking at where old R.J. Moore's store used to sit, and the old post office was there. Iron Williams once lived in this house. Then Tom Maynard. Tom's wife lives there now, Gert. Slow down. This house. Later, James Stubbs bought it, who lives there now. All these lots were acquired from J.M. Durham. J.M. Durham's son lives right here. He built this house. Vernon Durham. Brenda Fields lives in this trailer. I don't know who she married, right behind Vernon Durham's house. I wonder why they didn't. Manly Durham Jr. son's house, later sold. Buyer unknown. Okay. Cable Cooper built this house. Date unknown. I don't know who lives in these little houses here. Roy Jones lives in this one right here. Had this house built. One of his daughters lives there now. This is the old Bynum Bridge built about 1921. A grist mill once stood right here. Rock Spring Church. That's the Mildred Johnson house over the trailer. Charlie Howard trailer lives there. And Miss Lizzie lives there now. The Lim Fry house. His son lives here now. We are filming the right side of the old Bynum Road, going into Bynum. Unknown. I don't know who lives there. Garland Tripp's would have lived there. The old Will Crane, Annie Crane house. The Hearn Road, the way we go.
You got it on?
Yeah.
Say something about the Al Johnson Spring.
I can't turn. We're going down the hill right into the Bynum Old Bridge. Right off to our right here is where Al Johnson's old spring was. This right here at Al Johnson Spring, this house on the right, I can remember back some Furls lived there. I think one of them, the name was Ruth, the girl, one of them Walter, and later Tom Crane or James Rowe.
Dixon lived there.
And the Dixons, Frank Dixon lived there once, and now George, don't know his last name, lives there. And want to go down this road here, the Bynum Beach Road. Yeah, I forgot that. Old blacksmith shop set down here. We're on the Bynum Beach Road. Going southeast. Better known as the Hearn Hole, where we go swimming. Going right in the sun again. Well, it's night, got that now. Used to be a house right there. God. The old home place at Will Hearn's, as far back as we can remember, where Jim, John, Hezekiah, Henry, Pauline, Willis Knight owns this house now. It's later built here. This house is built right here on the river. Roland Eubanks built this house to start with. I don't know who owns it now, who lives there. This is the house that Mr. Phil White built. His wife still lives there, Miss Martha. On top of the hill, right up from the old Hearn Hole. J.R. White's house was built in 1985 and 86, better known as Rat White House. This is the old Donald Johnson house. It was later that his son Slab lived there. Clarence Johnson. And then it was sold, and somebody lives there now. There's an old house right out back here that Mr. Everett Williams used to live in. Shorty Eubanks lived there, and also I remember Raymond Gurnger lived there. And this house right here beside used to be an old station, old service station. I can remember a station right here behind those cedar trees. I can remember when Paul Buchanan and his mother lived there, and Bill Gurnger lived there once, and later it burnt down, and Cliff Johnson built a cinder block house there, which stands now. You can't see it. The bridge on the Fitchburg side where the service station once stood, where Raymond Campbell and Joe Mitchell to it, I can remember running. There was a beer joint there back in the late 30s. And later, there was made a house out of it. And old Miss Howell, John Howell's mother, lived there. And that was in about the middle 40s. And this car come around there and went through the house from corner to corner. Nobody was injured. The bridges there now was built in 1921 and 1922. Across the bridge on the other side, you can see Bynum. On the left, the top of the old covered bridge, you can see the old grist mill. And on the right up there, you can see that's either the cotton house or old store building. And then right at the end of the bridge, a house where Joe and George Johnson lived in many years. And above that was, you can see old Bynum Church. Right out the end of the new bridge there, you can see Robert Moore's old store. Sold sandwiches, hot dogs, knickknacks, called it the joint, stand, whatever. There was a barber shop in there once. Tadpole Hearn once run it, Tuck Snipes, Ken Cooper, Lewis Cooper, Henry Hearn. You know what? Cotton House. You know what? We didn't get the picture coming up from the bridge down yonder all the way up. The old J.M. Odell Manufacturing Company, later in the 70s, was sold to Tuscarora Yarns. J.M. Odell Manufacturing Company, back in the later years. This is a powerhouse, wheelhouse, waterhouse, race, whatever you might want to call it, where they got the power to run the mill with. This new water wheel and power plant was put in about 1941 or 42. Don't remember. Once the old cotton gin sat right over there, where the Rueton building is sitting now. I can remember when it burned up and bust cotton, and me were the last ones to run the cotton gin. It burned up one Saturday night. The old Bynum Bridge, built in 1922. The old parsonage stood here once about 7 or 8 years ago. The new one was built, maybe longer. This is where I remember Frank Durham living. Warren Durham lives there now. This is the Bill Fowler house. Bill built that back in the 40s, late 40s, 50s. William lived there. William's wife now lives there, Sally Mae. This is where Miss Ellington lived, and Bill Bryant. Now, deem out the dang camera. We're up on Hearn Hill off the Hearn Road. Ronnie Ellis lives here. Next house, I don't know who lives there. Hearn Road, I don't know who lives there. D. Hearn, Lee Hearn's son-in-law lives there. Dang smoke got my camera. House trailer. I believe Margaret lives there. Billy Cooper's Margaret. Hearn's house. That house was bought over at Bynum and moved here, as I was told. His wife lives there now, Miss Elsie Hearn. This was Henry's old barbecue house. What he built, cook his barbecue in. That was Henry's house he built. I don't know who lives there now. This is where Margie Hearn lives now. House beside Margie's, don't know who lives in. There's the old Billy Cooper house below. Johnny Hearn built this house, stayed there a few years and sold to somebody later. I don't know who lives there now. This is on Hearn Hill. Claiborne Jones built this, I don't remember the year. Right on this corner right here, Ellington used to have an old store building. Bought it later from Pune, and Pune lived in it a while, and he moved it, Frank moved it up the back of his house. The Will Abernathy house. Several people lived in it once. Charles Ray Ellis bought it one time. Andy Dawson finally bought it. And Irma and his wife lives there now. G. Williams moved out of the old store back behind us here, up here. I don't know what year. You say 46. Harrison Pearl took over in 47. Now the post office and all. That's the superintendent's house. I can remember Mr. Edgar Moore living there, then Frank Durham, and now Ollie Wren lived. Mr. Luther Smith lived here, as back as I can remember. Mr. Paul Jones lived here back. Across the street from Paul Jones, I can remember back Kelly McDonald living there. Now James Ellis lives there. I don't know who lives there. Smith lived here. Then Miss Emmy Rigsby lived there. Then Paul Jones was last to live. Now Moose lives there. Will Crane, as far back as we can remember, lived there. Across the street, there's no house. The house burnt down. The one that I remember living there was Numa Perry. This house here back as far as and Morris Boggs lived here.
We lived before him.
Gwendolyn Ellis lived there. Miss Ada White lived there. Jim Hearn lived there. Right here, the house was moved on. Dick Sizemore lived in this next house right here. And Tranny and Hobart Johnson lived there. I don't...
Eddie and J.B.
Eddie and J.B. Ellis lived there.
Bill Guernsey lived there.
Bill Guernsey lived there.
McDuffie's lived there.
McDuffie's lived there. The house across from it, far back in the 40s, Coley Tripp and Annie lived this house right here. And Ed said somewhere along the line, and he thought Rob Hearn and Miss Ada had lived there. House right here, we can't, far back as we remember, Bo Peep Ellis family, Ed, said they lived there.
Charles was born there.
Charles Ray was born there. Across the street, Will Tripp lived there. Then later, O.D. Fowler and his wife, now Henry King, lives there. It's on... Yeah, I remember Garland lived there. This next house right here, Tom Suits was one I can remember, and Mr. Bunn White later moved in with it, and Effie and Henry Carter lived there. Henry lives there now. Across the street is a vacant lot. See right now, Bill Fowler, Ed said lived there once. Garland Tripp lived there once. Weesey Eubanks and Tranny and Hobart Johnson.
Somebody lived there before he did, but I can't remember.
Him, Joe Niles lived there at one time. June Howell, Ortney Campbell, and now Jimmy Elgin. The house behind Jimmy Elgin's here, Addie Johnson, Fred Johnson, Hobart's daddy lived there. Then Bill Bravenden lived there. Will Tripp lived there. Don't know who lives there now. Living here.
We're in Bottom, or is this house?
That house right there.
Since 1966.
1966.
June was 66.
Okay. Just wondered. This next house, as far back as I can remember, Ernest Wicker, Bob Clapp. Next house, as far back as I remember, is Raymond Garner. Then Bill Bravesden lived there. And now Rob Johnson lives there. Let's see, Rob Johnson lived in this house one time. June Howell lived there. Herman Crabtree lived there. June Howell lived there. Charles Ray Ellis lived there. Now Eddie Jones lives there. There was 3 houses back here on this street that had burnt down. Tom Andrews was living in one when it was burnt. The big house that stood right here behind Eddie Jones's, Miss Howard, Roy Skinny Howard's mother got burned up. The house right direct behind it, Golan Tripp lived there once, and this last house on the road right here before you get to the old reservoir, Carney Williams lived there. Paul Johnson lived there once. Carl Neal lived there once, and his wife Bernie lives there now.
Yeah, Herbert works over where I was at. I told him to come over here and see you.
Why don't your wife trying to get to it? You better get them for why they're good. Good ones up there too, but there's good ones up there now. No. You know what you're doing with that? Looking.
Get that highlight. Hey, you missed the house highlight. In down Wayne, you know, people buying got a bunch of them beer. Now, 8 or 10 school teachers over there want and all that.
So they sell them up there.
Clyde, how long you been living here?
Doug, you got me that about 20 years already.
20 years. You ain't much over 28, 29 years old, are you?
I'm 88.
80.
Okay. Thank you.
House on this road coming up the hill next to the reservoir goes back Joe Williams, Helen and William Howard, Ollie Heath, and 2 girls live there now, the only information I can get. This house right here on the corner of this vacant lot, I can remember when Shine Gales lived there, Edward Thomas, Everett Thomas rather, Mule Suits. Don't know what happened to the house, where it went. Old Mr. Jones lived here and died here. That was Mr. Paul Jones's daddy, Mr. Layton's. The old ball field. I got lights there now and won't even use it. This house right here, Mr. John Snipes built it for a little store back in the early 50s, I think. And don't know who lives there now. Mr. John built this house here and lived there for several years. Finally moved in with his son-in-law, Clyde Rixby. I don't know, it's sold now, I don't know who lives there. Mr. John built this little house out back of this. I think maybe Preet Johnson was the first one to live in it. Bill Bryant, and unknown now. Right now. At the bottom of your thing.
Yeah, right.
All right, start. You're filming right now, right?
You get Doug in that too. He wouldn't.
Okay. You got us all. Filming Bynum, January the 2nd, 1987. The one I remembered here was Leighton Jones, Frank Watts, Bill Garner, and now Gwendoline Ellis. Bill's there now. This next house, Walt Smith. Then Charlie Howard later moved in. I don't think anybody lives there now. Don't know who owned it. This is on the road facing the front of the mill. J.M. Odell. See him going down the road.
Get off.
That is the old river road. This next first house here on the right, all I can remember is me living there. We moved to Bynum 1931 or 1932 from Lakeview, the 4th of July. Lives there now. Works at Chapel Hill. This is the old river road that used to run from 15501 to 64 Highway East. WPA started this road back in the middle 30s, but worked very little on it, maybe a half a mile, clearing the right of way. Then it was stopped for some reason. Politics got in it, I guess. Yeah, I had that thing on, man. This is back of the mill, or at the end of the mill, the old boiler room, or the condition room where they used to condition yarn. Later, this loading ramp was built out the back in the 70s, and this lot was paved going down to the back of the mill to the river. The highest water marks that I can ever remember when Hall River got up was in about 1944, 1945. Water got in the winding room at the basement of the mill and come all the way up beyond this loading ramp. This is OJM Odell Manufacturing Company. That's the cotton house. The top of this first little building you see here, I believe they called it the waste house. Over the top of the waste house is a lapper room. This was later named the Mae Marsh Hill or Curve, where they sled when it snows. This is the first house right here on the left across from my mother's house when we moved there. Best I remember, Craven Stubbs lived there. Then Ed Cameron from Bynum. then Prate Johnson, my brother-in-law, then Jim Hearn, and then Goo Heath. You've been living here, buddy?
About 8 months.
About 8 months. What's your name?
Wayne Holiday,
Wayne Holiday. Where'd you move from?
Indiana.
Indiana. How'd you find this place?
I found the house. The house was abandoned, been sitting for 2 or 3 years with no one living in it. And I finally found the people that owned it, and I talked to them, and we agreed to work something out for rent for me to fix the house up so it was livable again.
What pulled you to Chatham County?
Work. I got a job with a contractor that lives, Ricky Fry, lives up there in the Bynum Road up there.
Okay. And what did you say your name was?
Wayne Holiday.
Okay, Wayne, thanks right here. That I can remember.
There used to be a house right back in there.
He had said that they used to live here. This was where Hazel was born. And when we moved to Bynum, I think Rob Hearn and Miss Ada lived there. Then later, John Howell. Somebody else lived there, but we'll skip him. And Bill Garn. That's where Bill was living when he died. I don't know who lives there. House across the street on the right, going up the hill. Mr. Bun White was living there when we moved to Bynum. Then later, Charlie Howard. Then later, Francis Hill, and J.C. Hill, and Flora McDuffie. And I don't know who's living there. Ben Lane lived in this house on the left here, and he built him a house up 15501, about 1.5 miles out of Bynum, and he moved from there up there. And later, Hearn, then Johnny Stubbs, and I don't know who's there. This house across the street on the right, Don Stubbs lived there when we moved to Bynum. Dick Sizemore and J.T. Rigsby and J.T.'s widow Louise lives there now. House here, old Mr. Stubbs lived there, and then later Benny Briggs and his mother stayed there to his mother's death back a few years ago. Mr. Stubbs was the father of Craven and Johnny Stubbs, Teen and Rose Stubbs, and Don Stubbs. It's on the left, burnt down here. Lee Montgomery lived there, and then Bob Pardon, Stubbs. Andrews owns it now. He was living there when it burned up.
If I said Sid, that'd be pretty close to your age. I mean, it's not polite to ask the woman.
She's not gonna tell that.
I know it, and I've been thankful, and I can't say how thankful I am for my 77 years.
77.
I'll be 78 the 30th of March.
This house right here, a little house, it was moved in here on this lot from Emmy's church. And on this lot here, before the house was moved in, the house was there then. Mr. Clarence Andrews lived there. Then later, Cecil Ellis. That's where Charles Ray was born. No, take that back. That's where Jerry was born. And Jerry later bought the house that's sitting there and moved it over to the other side of Pittsburgh. House here on the corner, as far back as I can remember, Tout Rigsby. Then later, Perry moved in. I don't know who lives there. There used to be a well right here at the end of this pavement. That's where we used to pump, carry our water from, to the bottom of the hill. Right here on this other corner, there was a big house. There, 2 families lived in it. Miss Ada Hearn and Rob and Eugenia Hearn and Francis. I think maybe it was Tom Hearn or Hugh Jr. and Francis Deddy. And this house that they lived in then David Baker moved in. He later he tore the house down. And this house is sitting here on the lot. This little house was sitting over back of it in the bottom. And the last one that lived there was the Heath. John Heath, across the street. That's where I remember David Baker living. Later, he married Noni King, and she moved across the street. Mary Council lives there now, and she said she moved here in 1949. She owns the place now. At this next house right here on the left, he thinks that's where Lowell Williams was born at. Miss Ruth Sleepy lived there. But I can remember when the McDuffie's lived there. Now, Effie Williams lives there. It's across the street. Lowell said this is the house that he lived in, was born in. But I can remember Ortney Campbell living there when we moved to Bynum. And then later, John Howell moved in. Don't know who lives there now. This next house right here, I remember Paul Johnson, Rob Hearn and Miss Ada, and Jack Wheeler, and Frank Dixon, and Frank Dixon's widow lives there now. Street across from Frank Dixon's house on the right side of the street said that he lived there when he was a baby. And then the McDuffies moved up there, Ray, Morales, Flora, and then Hobart and Tranny moved in, and Moselle Riddle, she lives there now. Right here, it's behind Frank Dixon's house. And Henry Abernathy lived there, and that's where he died. Now, Hope and Tranny on they live. Hope and Tranny Johnson. Bynum Methodist Church. I don't know what year this church was built or started. Way back, I can remember those Sunday school rooms built on back there. Mr. Harrison Ellington was the carpenter on it. Several of the boys worked on it. Ed Ellis, William David Smith, maybe Jake Lane, and I remember it very well. I must have not been over 7 or 8 years old. Standing in the churchyard, looking across the river now, and now I've inserted a picture of the way it used to look before the bridge was built there. I don't know what year that was. As somebody said was living could tell who that man and pair of mules in that wagon was down there, but I don't know. But that's the picture of the old grist mill and the old covered bridge on the Bynum side, going towards Pittsburgh. Harry Henderson and Noni lived there. Then Eddie Ellis used to live there. Weesey Eubanks lived there. I don't remember where Weesey occupied the whole house or not. But Johnny Stubbs lives there now. He's the owner. This is the front of Johnny Stubbs' house, facing the old highway. Standing in the yard, backyard of Lewis Cooper's, Colin Cyril, Johnny Williams, Edgar Swaney. It's about to tell him now. More Mountain Road. Clyde Rigby's son moved their trailer in there across the road. Remember Briggs Atwater living here, and his son Dinky. That's where Dinky was living when he died. I don't know who lives there now. Jack Parker, his wife, owned it. John Snipes had a sawmill right here on this corner at one time. That's when he built a house over across the road, I'm standing here. This is the gates up the dam where the controller race to make power down at the power plant down at the M. Odell manufacturing mill. Bridge was built in 1951 or 1952 because I can remember I was in service. My brother Sam worked on this bridge. I remember hearing him talk about working on it.
Run the mill, wouldn't even crack it.
This little house, yeah. I don't really know who built it, but Warren Smith owns it now. Some lady stays there that kind of watches after his mother. This is the Will Smith old place where Billy, Warren, and Johnny was raised. Warren's mother still lives there. She's about 95 years old, or will be in February, I understand. But we on the back side of this house here on the Will Smith Road, taking pictures from the rear. Merle Fry started this house and might have lived there a while. And then Gwendoline and her boy lived there a while. And then they sold it, and I don't remember the woman's name. But we at the back side of it on the Will Smith Road. That woman rents these trailers out. Here, right across from Harris's used car lot, Henry Ellis would have built this house. It's Ed's grandfather. Ed, you remember what year it was built?
Late 40s.
Built in the late 40s, Ed said. Miss Ellis's son lives there now, Bill Ellis. Gene Odom's place might get shot, you know, where anybody's at home or not. Arnold Reynolds built this house. He married Velna Suits, Julia Suits' daughter. Arnold got killed on a construction job, and later, several years later, Velna married Billy York. They live there now. Julia Suits, Velna's father, lives behind their house, right behind Velna's house. Mildred Johnson's little house. Then their father, Julius Suits. Julius built this house, and him and his wife, Maureen, live there now. Cut that next mailbox up down here. On the right, Warren Smith's boy built back in there. Smith bought this lot from Mr. Lemuel Burns, yeah, and was planning on building, and later decided to let his son have it, Greg. So Greg Smith is living there now. This is Palm Fashee's old place. I remember when he lived there. Palmer built that service station up yonder and sold this place to Mr. Lemuel Burns. I'll be here later. In about 1957, 1st of 1978, I think it was, that I bought the station. And this Mr. Burns and his wife live here now. This was the service station that Palmer Fashee built. In the year 280, built it, and I took it over. See any of them. What you see now, the top of the house down the bottom, is old Mr. Lonzo Campbell's home. Audrey and Chafin own it now, and Buddy Williams is renting. He lives there now. Bobby, my son-in-law and Tammy lived here in this trailer for several years. They sold it to this lady, Kathy's her name. They live there now. This is the Grady Camel house. He bought this, I understand, from Coley Odom way back. He remodeled built on it several different times. Eloise owns the house now. Terry Herndon and his wife live in it. This next building, was an old service station. Grady Campbell built way back. Several people run it. Walt Riddle run it. Mr. Henry Ellis run it. Cecil Ellis run it. And back in the late 50s and 60s, he remodeled it and put a restaurant in there, and Ed's mother and daddy run the restaurant and the service station. Later, Mr. Harris run it for a while. There's several people run it. The next house right below it there, one of Grady's houses he built, his son Coy lives there now. The next house with Jan Coy's, Grady's other son, Wallace, lives. Grady Campbell built this house, and several people lived there, and they go back to Edward, Everett Thomas lived there, Prime Merritt lived there, Charlie Williams lived there, Cecil Ellis lived there, and his wife, Miss Josephine, lives there now. Jerry built this house out back in Mr.